Howdy, welcome to INST 301 Cognitive Learning Theories. This week, after completing behavioral learning, changes in behavior, we are going to be covering the first part of cognitive learning, changes in knowledge. This cognitive learning theory primarily focuses on learning as an ongoing mental coordination of acquiring and later applying knowledge. One of the major differences of cognitive learning theory is the locus of an internal nature, focusing on mental thought and activities. Differing from learning a direct new behavior, in the cognitive realm, knowledge and information on strategies is learned. This results in an eventual behavior change. Lastly, the role of reinforcement within the two theories are fundamentally different. In behavioral, reinforcement directly causes more of the desired response. In cognitive, reinforcement is just one more source of information being presented and acts as more of a guideline. Now that we have distinguished cognitive apart from behavioral, let's move on to the flagship information processing theory. Information processing theory is rooted in the belief that humans process what they are presented with. This theory explores how our minds takes in the environmental information, stores it, as well as eventually uses it. In this theory, these events are called encoding, storage, and retrieval. These principles of organization are intertwined with the structures of information processing theory: sensory, working, and long-term memory. The initial structure in information processing is sensory memory. This is essentially the sensory input fuel that drives thought. We can take a smell and convert it to an understanding. One of the greatest aspects of sensory memory is capacity. We have a large capacity to withstand all of the bombardment of stimuli hitting us every day. While we have this capacity, we have an almost equally as small duration. This means we can only keep this bombardment going for 1 to 3 seconds at a time. The jump from sensory to working memory depends on the perception of the individual. Gestaltism is a perception pattern that says that individuals tend to fill in the missing gaps of a pattern, thus taking pieces and creating the coherent wholes. Gestaltism relies on how we process information. It can either be from the bottom up, aka feature analysis, taking each defining feature and putting them together. This takes a lot of time, or most of the time from the top down, using heuristics. This means skimming around and filling in what is needed by using the context and expectations of what you're doing. This can be exemplified by reading every single word or flowing through some content using context. This is kind of the basis of speed reading. In addition to perception and processing, we have to look at attention, the focus given to a stimuli. Since this is a limited resource that requires cognitive effort, individuals develop automaticity. This is where they increase efficiency in their actions, when actions essentially become habits, such as driving. I'm sure when you first got your driver's license, your hands were on 10 and 2, you were looking, there was no radio on. But as you become more experienced, I've seen people eat, put on makeup, even change clothes while driving. After processing information through the sensory stage, we must move on into working memory. Working memory is the second and arguably most important structure in information processing. This is the mind's workbench, or RAM card if I understand my computing correctly. Here, sensory memories can come together with items from long-term memory in order to create meaning and get the wheels turning. Working memory has three components: the phonological loop. This is an audio-related system to keep thought active in short-term memory, up to about 2 seconds. I always like to think of the song 8675309. We also have the visual spatial sketchpad. This is a visual system to keep thoughts active in short-term memory. And finally, the central executive, which controls the resources and attention given to each property. As they work together, the central executive applies reasoning to sensory information and governs all the audio and visual components. This governance and processing is called the episodic buffer, which has the ability to bring all of these inputs together. Finally, let's look at the duration and capacity of working memory. Duration of working memory is usually thought of to be somewhere between 5 to 20 seconds. This means that anything you want to keep must be actively maintained in the working memory phase. While 5 to 20 seconds is not a long time, there are strategies that can be used to extend this duration. The first is maintenance rehearsal. This is the process of keeping a memory alive through self-repetition until documentation is possible, you can write it down somewhere, or the knowledge moves to long-term memory. The other is elaborative rehearsal, where associations are made with persons or concepts that they're already familiar with. Like if I met a new person named Alice, I associate her with Alice in Wonderland or my other friend Alice. There's also a strategy to increase the capacity of working memory, since it's only being able to carry about 5 to 9 pieces of information at a time. Even most phone numbers go over this. This attempt in increasing the capacity is known as chunking. Chunking is the process of grouping small units of information into groups or units that have a greater meaning. Using the phone number as an example, you can chunk by an area code associated with the location, a prefix, and a suffix, such as 979, the Bryan College Station area code, 845, the Texas A&M University phone prefix, and finally 1776. Now hopefully this would lead to a history department, but I doubt I'll be that lucky. That last 1776 bit not only used chunking, but also used a bit of elaborative rehearsal, associating it with history, American Revolution. All of these concepts and strategies are meant to pave the way to long-term memory. This is where learning is really internalized. That's also this topic we're going to be covering next time. See you then. Thanks and gig 'em.